Hello, everyone. How are we all doing? Coming in, sit on down. It's time for another episode of the Truth of Therapy Sessions. Episode 78, I think now. My, how the time flies. Got a bit of a mixed bag for you guys today. A bit of a special guest episode, I suppose, because I've reached out to an old friend of mine, somebody who I've been talking to for maybe like well over a year now. And I thought, I want to see how they feel about how far they have come over the year or so since they began podcasting. And I think it'll be interesting just to have a bit of a catch-up. But also in the second half of the show, for the second hour, I'm going to get a musician on who I mentioned in my last live Q&A, who's going to come on and share his testimony to finding the truth, finding Christ, and making music about that afterwards. And also, just his journey in general. I think it could be a fun conversation. But for now, I've got with me David Lee Corbo, aka The Raven, otherwise known as the co-host of the Nephilim Death Squad podcast. David, are you there? Can you hear me?
I am here. I can hear you well. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for doing this. I really appreciate it. It's good to get you on here. So, this is the Truth of Therapy session. So this really is an introspective conversation about the truther's journey more than anything. I don't think is this your first time doing this? Did we do one before?
It is. We were going to do one in the past, and then we had some scheduling conflictions. And but no, this is my first time, and I'm excited to do it. This is a pretty unique idea, Paul. When my co-host Top Lops and I first heard that you were doing this, it struck us as a simple angle, but kind of a genius one, because I think as conspiracy theorists, everybody's coming to us for information. Nobody's coming for us to see how we're doing. So it's nice to have a change of pace.
Well, that's pretty much what the philosophy of this was. It's kind of everybody's kind of in this together. And I think everyone's journey to becoming a conspiracy theorist is pretty much the same. We're not as unique or special as I like to think we are. And everyone's kind of lost loved ones along the way, I guess is how I'm describing this. A lot of people have tried to wake up their closest friends and family, and it's exploded horrifically in their face, and now they're alone and isolated hermits who are crazy that no one wants to go near with a 10-foot barge pole. And I'm like, well, I'll go near you. Come talk to me. Let's get it off your chest, and let's air this out in the open. And I think you'll be surprised that we're not actually alone. There are thousands of us who have been through the exact same thing. And community, I think, is our strength when it comes to this. And this is all about getting together and building that community and just helping other people hear one another's stories, And it seems to be working. People like it. And, like I said, I don't know about genius, but it's just about bringing people together, fundamentally.
Well, it's sometimes those genius in the sense of how simple it is and how effective it is, but how nobody else is doing it, right? It's often those things that are like right on their face, very obvious, because so many of us, you said that we all have this sort of shared experience. We're not as maybe unique as we like to think as individuals and what we've gone through. But that doesn't take away the interesting aspect, because it is an interesting pathway for somebody to take on a psychological level, right? It's like what you're doing is you're fighting this uphill battle. Being a conspiracy theorist insinuates having woken up at some point. And then what you're doing is you're trying to facilitate the waking up of another individual, which is difficult, because if it wasn't, we'd have all figured it out when we were real young. And so, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of losing of family and things like that. And so, yeah, it may not be unique, but it is an interesting journey, nevertheless.
Absolutely. Well, I think this day and age, everyone's becoming a conspiracy theorist and their aunts. You know what I mean? It's kind of, you can't not be a conspiracy theorist in this day and age with the way the state of the world and the way everything just seems like absolute insanity. I think a lot of people have been through, especially that big event that happened starting in 2021. I think a lot of people have really come to this movement that had been festering in the corner of YouTube for like maybe a decade prior. And now it's just flourished and blown up in a way that it's very impressive. Because, I came back in 2022, end of 22, maybe starts, I can't remember now, about a year and a half ago or something like that, after taking like a 5-year break. And, I went through the whole scenario working in a supermarket, saw the worst of people, you know what I mean? And it's kind of, and after leaving that life behind and coming back to doing this, because this is what I want to do, and I noticed the landscape had changed dramatically from when I was first on it, like ending in like 2018, 2016. It was a complete new landscape with a lot of fresh new eyes in the truth movement, whatever you want to call this thing, And I think a lot of people were kind of lost as well. They didn't really know what to make of discovering the truth for the first time. And I thought, some therapy's in order. So I kind of got in here and I just started picking up where I left off. Like I said, the reception's been very, very good. And we've built a huge community now just through understanding conspiracy. We have a Telegram with like over almost 2,500 members. And they're a very tight-knit group sharing testimonies and each other's stories and journeys and supporting each other, building relationships, organizing meetups, and it's just become a really wonderful thing to see.
Incredible.
It's a wonderful thing to see. It really is, and I'm happy I played a small part in facilitating that somehow. But today's about you. Forget all those other people; they've had their turn. Today's a bit mainly about your journey, David. To be honest, because when I met you, you messaged me what must have been a year ago, maybe a year, maybe longer. Now I'm thinking about it.
Might have been longer. I was doing the Ravens Watch, and I had just decided to take on creating content through the biblical lens, but attacking conspiracy theories as a topic. And I was lucky enough to stumble upon your work pretty early in my, I don't know what you would call. I mean, it wasn't my podcasting career because, truth be told, I had been a podcaster for many years before, quite unsuccessfully, and I would attribute that to not making content that resonated with me. I was making predominantly comedy content, but I had been a conspiracy theorist since my teenage years. And so it was the most interesting thing to me is the world of conspiracy theories. And I think I was doing myself a disservice I have a sort of maybe charisma, presentability when it comes to making content. I was just aiming those skills at the wrong thing. And so I finally did start doing that. Came across your content pretty early. And since I was trying to go at the conspiracy world through the biblical lens, your and I know by this time you've beat it to death. I'm sure we've talked before, eager to move on to new things, but your Nephilim look like clown theory is still something. I think I tagged you the other day on Twitter in regards to something, clown-esque and Nephilim-esque. And so, I would say it's probably been closer to the 1.5 year mark.
Yeah, time really has flown dramatically since then. And I feel like I've watched you kind of grow in that time. And it's like, I know that guy. I knew that guy when he was just 200 subscribers, calling himself a raven, and just had a little had like some kind of weird like poster in the background of some bird or something like that.
Yeah, I had a green screen. Man, I mean, it's been a roller coaster because I had a certain trajectory, and I think that God blessed me in a huge way, and that was not finding success before maybe I was meant to. And the reason that I say that is because I would have handled it poorly. I'm handling it poorly now, and I would have handled it significantly worse had this sort of attention and platform come to me before it was time. And so thank God for that. But yeah, it's been a roller coaster of 1.5 years. And shortly after doing the Ravens Watch and doing that episode with you, I met my co-host Top Lobster, who is an inflammatory what would you call it? A controversial character, especially on X. And he and I share that conspiracy theory through the biblical lens aspect, but otherwise we're very opposite in our approach to the content and just our interacting with the public. And so I think that formula, despite being very much the opposite of one another, really ended up turning into something huge that, it's taken off in a weird way. I would say, much like your community, where you're saying that you're happy to have even been just a small part of it. We've also built up this community, and I would agree, the show is a small part of it, but overwhelmingly, the conjoining tissue is a belief in God and a belief in Jesus Christ, which is, we took an unconventional route there, but we got there.
Well, I don't think you can really sincerely be a truther if you haven't reached that conclusion, to be honest. And if you are a truther and you haven't reached that conclusion yet, you're just working your way to it. And I think it takes everybody their own amount of time and their own amount of research and information to get to that point. And I'm patient and I'm willing to wait for as long as it takes personally. But when you do finally get to the truth in Christ and that answers all your questions, we'll be over here waiting for you with open arms. Don't worry about it. We'll forget about all the weird stuff you did when you were into crystals and sacred geometry, But other than that, we're all here just waiting for everybody to come home, basically. And yeah, like I said, I remember we had our first podcast, didn't we? I think we were talking about the clowns. And it was just me ranting for like 2 hours, and you just sat there politely nodding along, going, that's interesting, right? You know, the classic Paul move there. And we just kind of stuck around together. I said, come, we'll have to do this again, you know, stick around. And you invited me to a group on Twitter called the Nephilim Death Squad. Okay.
Yes.
And it was just a bunch of really extremely politically charged members who were all big Twitter players, just posting extreme, like, shit posting type truth stuff, you know what I mean? Just like trolling the world with the truth, I would call it, or something like that. And it was like Sir Ascanor was on there, and
yes, Ascanor was on there. We had the guys from the Phone Booth podcast. There were a couple of flat earthers. My co-host was in there as well, Top Lobster. Yeah, it was as you described. Was it
Politics is Masonic Theatre was on there as well.
Yes.
And then there's just me kind of in the corner, like, I'm the clown guy. How you doing, guys? Are you all right? You know? And it's kind of, we were just all like posting random stuff in there. And I remember I even had like a voice call with all of you at one point. We just talked for like an hour when I was like having a break from work, writing the book or something, just outside where I normally do it, you know. And I was like, oh yeah, I can hop on for a call. And it was kind of fun, like sharing like a space with these content creators. And that was the Nephilim Death Squad, you know what I mean? And then next thing I know, it goes quiet for a bit. We all have our lives, we all move on, we do whatever we're doing, and then boom, this podcast appears called the Nephilim Death Squad. And once again I was like, I remember that name. Is this what they're doing? Is this where it's come to, you know? And then one thing led to another, and it's like, right, Paul, you got to get on. We got to get you on the new podcast that we're doing. And I did the clown thing again, and then we did the Millennial Kingdom thing eventually, and then we did it with JT, and then we've just been back and forth in each other's lives since that moment. But I kind of saw the Nephilim Death Squad from its inception. I saw its inspiration, and it was like a joke at first, this idea that, like, you know, screw the Nephilim, like, we're coming for you. Like, it's like no fear, you know what I mean? I just remember seeing it grow from its infancy into what it is today, and it's interesting to have that behind the scenes vantage point that most people don't have. It was fun to be a part of in some small way, to be honest.
Well, I mean, if we can toot our own horn over there on Nephilim Death Squad, our development and our popularity, we very much caught fire in like a year's time. And so I would say that it's a rarity to get to see a podcast go from that sort of in other circumstances, you'd have to be there for a number of years, right? Like 5-6 years, you get to watch a thing come to fruition. Shout out to like Tony Merkel from the Confessionals. He's been doing it for about 7 years, I think. And so he's got, of course, relationships with the podcasters, and he's got a devoted fan base, and a lot of them have seen that development over time. It is, I was, asking Demonic AI the other day how our show stacks up just in sort of the greater body of podcasts. There are 4 million podcasts, I think, give or take, like 670,000 that are potentially inactive. And among those, we rank in the top 0.5%. And for us to have done that in a year's time is significant. And what I would say is that it wasn't necessarily the content or even the characters that are delivering the content, meaning myself and my co-host, as much as it was timing. So what you said about these past 4 years, especially in 2020, 2021, a lot of people woke up, for lack of a better term. And what happens is there's a great falling away from the official narrative, which is what, gives birth to a conspiracy theorist. Except in this particular instance, we had a worldwide event that gave birth to, a large number of conspiracy theorists all at once. Whereas typically, in the previous years, we would wake up on our journey individually away from one another. This is the first time I think that a lot of people could look to the left and look to the right and talk to the people that were next to them about the strangeness that was going on. We didn't have that. No. Very isolating, you know what I mean? And you end up pushing a lot of people away if they don't have that shared experience. Well, in 2020, 2021, people had this shared experience. And what happens is, it's a slow one. It doesn't happen all at once. It's a seed that's planted. Then over time, it develops into this awareness of essentially the realm that you're being or that you're surrounded by is not at all what they're telling you it is. So I would say that Nephilim Death Squad came along at the right time with the right message. That message, so the timing, we know why. But then as the culture moves forward, we get a lot of things, right? We get Drag Queen Story Hour. We get a lot of like strange, horrific things, the Epstein situation or Hillary Clinton, what she's doing is, are they drinking young ones, like that sort of a thing? And that really hits the conspiracy community in such a big way that I think it primed them to finally be able to go, you know what? Let's look at the Bible. And the beautiful thing about that was I went through that too. So Nephilim Death Squad, you're not watching a biblical theologian, a well-researched individual. We call ourselves Dangerous Retards on the show. That's actually the name of the fan base. It's also the name of another show that we've subsequently created. And it's a cheeky way of saying, I'm not your superior or your educator. What Top and I really are the class clowns. So we're not even the teacher. We're not standing up in front of the class. The teachers are the people, not to put pressure on you, Paul, but it's like you, it's other people, it's JT, it's the people that we bring on to have a conversation with. The only thing that Top and I do well is we ask the teachers fun questions. We're loud, we're charismatic, we're kind of goofballs, we're clowns in very many ways, not like the aforementioned Nephilim sort, but it's like that has created a feeling like we're learning with the audience instead of trying to teach the audience. And that has really resonated with people too. So yeah, it's a product of the time. And I think the other thing that I kind of wanted to say on that too is I think there's a big danger to what we're going through. When we talk about all these people waking up in 2020, 2021, imagine for a second, there's an analogy I like to use. Are you familiar with the game Uno?
Yes.
So, okay, there's a viral video. It's very funny. It's a woman wakes up her boyfriend who's in a dead sleep, and she's got the camera on him, and she goes, babe, wake up. It's your turn. And she hands him a stack of Uno cards, and he wakes up, and in his daze or his stupor, he's so confused that he starts playing Uno. He starts he'll look at his cards. He'll look at the pile. He'll pick an appropriate card. He puts it down, and then his girlfriend, she'll put a card down, and he goes back and he looks at his cards to now keep the game going. And then he finally realizes, like, what are you doing? I was just asleep. You woke me up. We're playing Uno. I'm not playing Uno. And he goes back to sleep. When you first wake up, you're very confused and you can be taken advantage of. And what I'm finding right now, Paul, is that a lot of people are being taken advantage of. So a lot of people have woken up, but somebody sat next to them, and before they could rub their eyes, they went, hey, New Age movement. Hey, here's some Gnostic texts. Hey, what about Hermeticism? What about Freemasonry? What about the OTO? What about, Kabbalah? All these different things. And so people are waking up, but as conspiracy theorists, and I'm guilty of this myself, when we first wake up, we're so kind of disturbed that we've been lied to such a high degree that we grab onto the first thing that looks like the truth. It's like being casted out into the ocean and just trying to grab a life vest. And that might be the Anunnaki. You might be a big Billy Carson fan all of a sudden, and you believe that the Sumerians had it down. You know what I mean? And it's like learning that you've been lied to is only the first step on the path to finding the truth. And so I'm hoping that people like me or people like you, we can kind of guide people. That's about all I can offer, though.
It's a tough one because I agree with that. It's basically the catch all that's waiting for them. That's the pattern. People wake up, generally fall into New Age philosophy, swim around in that for varying amounts of time. Some people never leave. Some people dip their toes in. Some people LARP for a little bit, or other people, kind of try to understand it and then maybe just walk away and just go back to sleep. But usually that's the first thing they end up in. That, and a New Age is a huge umbrella. It's a massive umbrella. It's such a, like I said, you just named like maybe 3% of the factions underneath that, where it can go. But I suppose New Age thought is just the catch-all term for all of these mystery wisdom schools, we'll call them, which have many factions and leaders and groups, and Theosophical Society is one of them, the Frankist schools. And it gets weird, when you actually go into looking at the tree of all these things. But it all kind of goes back to the main top ones. I think it's like you said, Hermeticism. I think Platonism might be up there as well, or more like study of philosophy in the earth and this type of thing, and and then there's like paganism kind of mixed in with it as well, and it's kind of,
there's also the alien thing, right? There's the New Age alien thing, so maybe it's the Galactic Federation of Light that does it for you. Or,
they're the new ones, aren't they? They're more like the new, the real new ones that came around recently for the age of going into the age of Aquarius stuff, And the thing is, they have quite a lot of compelling stuff because they're really good at understanding the creation and the nature of creation. So they've got the whole frequency, sound, sacred geometry, mathematical stuff down. They're really good at explaining all that. And it's true. It's actually, that is how things work. That's how the world is created and how it operates. And that's the mechanics behind it all. But they've made a god out of it. They made an idol out of it. And they've said, and it all comes from you. You're the one creating everything through your consciousness collectively. We are all God. We just forgot that word God. You know, it's kind of, that's the twist. That's like 90% truth and that 10% just taking you the other way. And that's what they do.
That's it, Paul. That's exactly what we talk about on the show. It's like, in order for, we don't dismiss these practices as being, it depends on the nature of the practice, right? If you're trying to game the system because you now understand the fundamental building blocks of the reality that we inhabit, and you're trying to now leverage it for your benefit, well, that's where the bad comes in. But in the Bible, we all are called to be as wise as serpents and as gentle as doves. And I think that it includes knowing these things. It doesn't mean practicing them, and it doesn't mean implementing them in your lives, but if you can begin to understand what these people are practicing, then you can see it unfolding around you. And then maybe with a little bit of grace, you can avoid falling for whatever it is, because typically these things are going to be used in a way to manipulate you, to manipulate the public's opinion for somebody else's benefit. And at least you can now not partake to whatever degree, if you can see it. And so I don't think there's harm in looking at it. But to your point, Paul, these things are real. And you cannot build anything long lasting on a foundation of lies. It has to be built on at least a cornerstone of truth. And from there, you can kind of convincingly keep telling these truths and then slip in that one fundamental lie. So we say like 9 truths and 1 lie. That 10th one is a lie. And that 10th one usually is, to your point, Paul, you can be as God. In one way, shape, or form, it's the same lie that the serpent sold in the garden. You want to talk about patterns? That's kind of what we do as conspiracy theorists. We recognize patterns. That one is one that will not. I mean, you want to, beating a dead horse it's every day. Every time we dive into something, of course, at its core, it's the same thing with the Galactic Federation of Light that I mentioned. It's this idea that there's a council of representatives from various alien races. In most versions of the story, they created us in some way, shape, or form. So that's always the other lie right there, is this, they alter our creation mythos. And then the other one is that we can ascend and we can be as sort of gods on this galactic council. And that's something that you see over and over again. You know, to be honest, Paul, I grew up a conspiracy theorist, and you hit the nail on the head when you said that's usually where we all start. We start in some form of like new age, something or another. And I did myself. I never practiced anything, but I was disenchanted with the conventional explanation that the reason that I was seeing sigils and symbols everywhere in music videos, in Hollywood films, and this and that is because animators have a good sense of humor, or because it's controversial. And rappers and hip hop artists love to put it in their music videos because it gives them an edge. And that was typically what I was receiving. And I refused to accept that as an answer. So because you don't have anybody to tell you the truth, you have to start there. So I often say that everybody else came to the church through the front door, but me and a few others came in through the back door. You know, we didn't find it on the street. We went through the back alleyways, and the back alleyways were covered in weird symbols and sigils. And, you know, we had to pass through Aleister Crowley to get there, and all of that crap, just to finally get to the point where we said, okay, the Bible has it right. And the central component to the experience that we're having is Jesus Christ. And it took a long time to get there, but man, I've gotten nothing but vindication after vindication, understanding after understanding has been granted to me. And it's been like this massive piece of the puzzle that I didn't have when I was a teenager. And now as a 34-year-old man, I couldn't, it is absolutely fundamental to understanding what we're going through.
Oh yeah, I like the back alley. I've used that phrase myself in the odd interview. I'm a backdoor Christian. I came in through the back by accident in many ways. I kind of just ended up here because nothing else was working for me, and I had to kind of just give God a chance, and he paid dividends after just opening that door, you know. But I like how you said you have to kind of get past Aleister Crowley. It's more like you have to kind of step over his fat, ugly, drunken, passed out corpse to try and to try and withstand the horrible smell of feces and
all those
semen,
guys,
you know.
Jack Parsons and what's the other guy, L. Ron Hubbard, and all those guys. They have a bit of the truth, and so I can see why people, and I have great empathy for people who stop there, because it's hard. It's hard. You know what's difficult about it, Paul, is it's not fun to continually have to shed your worldview.
No,
it sucks. And so you do it once or twice and you're basically traumatized, and you're just hoping that at any moment you found the truth. What I found is that it's been 18 years, and I think I probably know less, or I know more in some ways, but I'm aware that I know less. It's hard. It's like the more you learn, the less you know. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's where I'm at right now. Is like, I know some fundamental things. I know that Jesus Christ is central, and that there is a spiritual realm, and it is populated with things that hate us. And like, if those are the things that I know, it's a very short list. If I want to go down the list of things I don't know or I'm not sure about, that is a very long list. We'll be here for a few hours.
Well, that's, to your point, that is the cornerstone. Here's the foundation which you need to build your house upon. He's the rock to build your house upon, of solid ground. Everything else is sinking sand. I came to the end of my new age stint, burn out on psychedelics, trying to find answers in the spiritual realms and Zen philosophy and all that nonsense. You know what I mean? And it's kind of, I had nothing but negative things in my life to show for it. Everything was getting progressively worse, and more isolated, and mental exhaustion is a good way to describe it. It's kind of like I'm exacerbated. I'm no closer to understanding anything at all, and I only gained any true wisdom and understanding when I gave it to Jesus. Basically, I said, "Please help me. I cannot do this. Everyone keeps talking about you in this conspiracy world, and I just don't want to know. But I guess you're the last thing I need to look at. And as soon as you open that door, it's like, oh, that's the conspiracy. Okay, all makes sense now.
It's almost embarrassing.
It is. It's like, I'm sorry it took so long.
Right there.
But it's because Billy Carson kept stopping me in the alleyway and going, "Do you want to buy some emerald tablets of Thoth?" You know what I mean? It's kind of
exactly. Did you know that they altered us so that we could mine gold? Their atmosphere is dwindling. It needs gold. Yeah, it is. It's embarrassing, man, because it wasn't something that I ever fully casted away. I was never atheist. I was only agnostic. I think if I have the definition of that correct, just in the sense of saying, I don't know, right? I don't know what's true. I'm, at the time I was only a teenager. And then at the time I was only a 20-year-old man. And at the time I was only a new father and a new husband. And you know what I mean? So it's like, I always don't know. And I'm blessed that God granted me some version of, I guess, for lack of a better term, gnosis, because I'm just a stubborn, a-hole. And that's how my brain works. I kind of need something. You got to show me something. And so, I had that, but I never casted it away, Paul. Everything, 16, 17, 18, 19 years old, I'm sleuthing through the internet. I'm listening to the Galactic Federation of Light, David Icke, Anonymous, Alex Jones is shouting his thing. I'm worried that they're going to turn the FEMA camps into, or they're going to turn the Walmarts into FEMA camps.
I remember that.
Remember all the plastic coffins? I thought they were going to fill the plastic coffins with us.
I remember that. Yeah, all of it. And the train networks, man, they're all connected via trains.
Yes, it was horrifying. And everything that I looked at kept being like, this kind of sounds a lot like prophecy from the Bible. And I'd look at it and I'd go, well, it sure does. Anyway, and I would just continue to look at whatever I was looking at. So no, I never dismissed it, man. But that's what I mean when it's embarrassing, because it's like, it wasn't even hard to gain access to, right? Like when I was a kid, I might have been like 17 years old. I walked across the street to the church that I had never gone to because I wasn't raised religious. And I asked for the Bible and they gave me a Bible. Somebody told me if you go into a church and ask for one, they'll give you one. And in my short-sightedness, I was getting the Bible for the book of Revelation. And I wanted it because that's like, it's fundamental to every conspiracy theorist journey. There are prophecy within the book of Revelation that you can look around and see unfolding yourself. And I went through it. I looked at it as a kid and I went, boy, that's hard to read. I don't know what they're saying because the language is so dense. And that was it. I just never really sat down and looked at it beyond that. And now it's what my entire show is dedicated to. And like I said, it's resonating with people. And I think it's because the times that we're in, which a lot of people say every generation thinks that they're in the end times. And I understand that. And I'm not saying that we definitively are in one pivotal point, moment in the Bible or not, but life never stopped being biblical.
Mm-hmm.
When we look at the Bible, we think of like biblical times as being way back then. But biblical is more of a way to describe the nature of where you are. I mean, the word Bible means book or collection of books. But biblical in the cultural context. We've never stopped living in a biblical time. It's still a biblical time. It's still a supernatural time. The entire human experience is that.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. I think the biblical narrative is our context. It's not, the story never ended. We're living it. We are in the narrative of creation from God to now, from Adam to now. We are it. We are the combination of all of that history. And again, it's contentious to say where we are specifically on the timeline. You know where I stand with all this type of stuff and where we've kind of been with this concept. But I never fundamentally made that a salvation issue in my mind. It's just, we need to be aware that we've been lied to, and yes, biblical things are certainly happening. We know that much for sure. And wherever we are and whatever's going on with there, I mean, get your relationship right with Christ, and you are saved fundamentally, and that's kind of where I've always stood with that. But it's kind of whether we are seeing Revelation unfold or it's some kind of cheap rehashing, mockery rehash of Revelation, like a cheesy, we're trying to do it our own way type of Revelation, but it's not quite as good as the first
like
time.
Like a low budget version, right?
Exactly,
it's like a low budget version.
That's what it feels like.
Instead of the Lord of the Rings, we have like the King of the Bracelet, is what we're going through. Yeah.
That's a good one. Yeah, I mean, but you still need to have your wits about you either way, because you don't know. Yeah. We're kind of in ignorance here, whether we like it or not. I mean, we know a thing or two because of our conspiracy research. We know we're being lied to, but we don't actually know what the deception we're living under is truly. Right. We have hunches, the best we can do with what we've got. And, I lean more towards Little Season stuff, but I know a lot of people are still leaning more towards Mark of the Beast around the corner, Antichrist stuff. But wherever you are, just be ready for whatever's about to happen. Be prepared.
And that's... To be ready, Paul, is just to, I mean, honestly, you can have a person, there are people that would fare a lot better than me in their relationship and their journey to salvation through Jesus Christ. And the reason that I say that is because, honestly, if you didn't have any of this information and you just focused on communicating with Jesus Christ, living a sinless life to the best of your abilities, repenting when you stumble, and just trying to stay on that narrow path, it doesn't matter where we are in the timeline, you're going to be okay, And so in so many ways, it almost is laughable that I don't like to say that we ring the alarm on this show. The reason that we do it is because I find all of this genuinely fascinating. I've been doing this for so long, and it's never I did it for free. Now I get to do it for a show. You know what I mean? So even if the camera wasn't on, I would still be pursuing these things. But the truth of the matter is, it almost doesn't matter where in the timeline you are, as long as you are pursuing the truth and you're pursuing a relationship with God the Father through Jesus Christ, then you're going to be okay. But I don't know. I recognize that because once you get there, you realize like that's sort of the key. And in the meantime, I'm going to keep yapping on the internet and telling everybody about this thing. So the show is always about bringing people to Christ. I'm sure you've had this experience. One of the beautiful things about it is we get like letters from people that say, especially for us, I mentioned at the top of the show, we're sort of controversial characters, a bit of shit posters really on Twitter. And we've gotten into throwdown, drag out fights with people, never really emotionally invested, but just going through this, like, I don't know, sort of controversial shitstorm. But what that does, we found, is it brings in people that the church can't reach. It brings in people that it's almost like I'm coming down and hanging out in like the dirty alleyways with people and then bringing them out. So they see that I can do the same thing. Because when I grew up, I was homeless for a long time, from like 16 to 21. I've been all kinds of things. You know, I was a drug dealer. I was in jail for fights and all kinds of crap like that. It's very hard for me to pretend to be somebody else. But what I found is that as long as I am exactly who I am, it resonates with people. And then I somehow end up getting this thing at the other end of it where it's like, hey, buddy, thanks for bringing me back to Jesus Christ. Thanks for bringing me back to God, because I left the church all these years ago and was totally disenchanted with it. And somehow our show brought them back. So I don't get caught up in the, much to my own detriment. I don't get caught up in ever portraying a holier than thou. I'm kind of a moron, a bit of a douchebag. And that doesn't change the fact of the matter, which is, at the end of the day, this is about strengthening your relationship with Jesus Christ.
Mm-hmm.
People get mad at me. They're like, "Oh, how could you, behave in such a ridiculous way and then say Jesus Christ?" And it's, my behavior does not dismiss that. It doesn't change that. And if you already have a strong relationship with Christ, I don't necessarily know that you need me at all. You don't need me at all. I'm just there for the people that fall through the cracks, that like to say something offensive now and again, but don't have anybody in their sphere of influence who's moral and who's moving them towards Christ. And I think that's the only role that I play.
I think I've always understood it as, no, how do I put this? What works for some may not necessarily work for others, is kind of always how I've always phrased it. The truth is the truth, yes, but that's not enough just to get people convinced of it. People don't buy products, they buy the person selling the product. And some people might need a particular type of salesman to be persuaded of the truth, because sadly people need to be persuaded of the truth. That's the state of the world we live in. They're not just going to buy it because it's true. More often than not, they don't want it. They need to be convinced of why they need to have the truth and understand the truth. Most of the time, they're trying to do everything they can to avoid the guy trying to sell it to them, So I think everyone needs their own type of salesman, whatever works for them on their level. And like I said, I have my style, and like I said, I get my people, and people who tell me, oh, the way you said things make sense to me, just like you've had reached a certain audience and a certain people. But as long as it's built on the foundation of Christ and leading them to, or pointing them to that truth, I'm happy for however people get there. And I'm not, because like I say, because I wasn't raised in a church and I don't know the rules of engagement. I'm not like predisposed to think like, oh, you can't swear or you can't act like this or be like that. You have to be exactly like this if you want to call yourself a true Christian, that type of stuff. I'm not as legalistic as a lot of people about that kind of thing.
Well, that's it.
But I know a lot of people out there kind of, like I said, it doesn't work for some people, but it may work for others. And I think you're reaching a specific group of people. Because maybe you want to talk to this, but you had like a meeting, for example, not that long ago, where you got like a get together with people, and it seems like you do that quite regularly. Is that going on now?
Yes. So we do Brohemian Grove. Brohemian. Brohemian Grove, obviously a knockoff of the very famous Bohemian Grove, where they're sacrificing children in the swamps of California. We got really lucky and ended up at a live event that had no name at the time. It was just a comic book signing by Sam Tripoli. In fact, I don't know if you guys can see it. It's kind of peeking out there off to the side. This is my Brohemian Grove poster. And then on the other side is Chaos Twins. Now, Chaos Twins is a comic book by Paranoid American and Sam Tripoli. And so Sam Tripoli, being the host of Tinfoil Hat, is one of my favorite content creators. And he was coming down to do this comic book signing. And it was local to where me and my co-hosts were. So long story short, we end up getting the invite to go there and help, maybe do like a live Nephilim Death Squad. And, Tripoli is going to do some stand-up. We'll sign some comics. And while we're there and we're on stage, which is a surreal moment for me, because as I said, I podcasted for many years quite unsuccessfully. And then all of a sudden in 1 year, this thing takes off. I'm on stage with Sam Tripoli signing, my autograph. It's a ridiculous concept on these comics. And before the show really starts, and we're just sitting there signing comics on stage, Sam Tripoli leans over and he goes, "What are we calling this thing?" And my co-host goes, "David has a good idea." And it was one that I was talking to him about on the drive there, which was this Brohemian Grove thing. I wanted to do live events, stand-up, conspiracy podcasts, and, you know, just kind of things like that. And I wanted to call it Brohemian Grove. So he asked me, and I said, "Oh, yeah, I have an idea for an event called Brohemian Grove." And Sam Tripoli just lifts his head up and says, "Welcome to the first official Brohemian Grove." And I about shit because I couldn't, you know, this is one of my favorite content creators, somebody who I really admire. I believe that Sam Tripoli genuinely cares about the truth. And that's what I admire in people is I don't care so much about your path. You know, as you said, Paul, eventually, if you're really searching for the truth, you come to Christ. And so when you do, we'll be here. And I think Sam Tripoli is even on that path. But he's gone through all the weird avenues to get where he is now. And I've always recognized that for him, it's just about where the truth is. And that's something that I value a lot in a person. So for him to say that, it was tremendous. So we decided to take another crack at it. And we did another one 6 months later, this time without him. And we invited a bunch of content creators. Cult of Conspiracy was there. A bunch of political commentators, comedy podcasters, and stand-up comedians. And we pulled it off. And so now we're gearing up for the third one. And essentially what it's turned into is the first few hours are like, I'm not going to say the keywords here, but last Brohemian Grove, we talked about sort of the whole Podesta Hillary Clinton situation. You know, what would you call it? Pizza situation, right? All of those things. We did presentations on that, Paul. We did presentations on that on stage while the audience was dressed in black cloaks because it's Brohemian Grove, right? So we decided what would be funny is if with the VIP tickets came a cloak, and lots of people bought them. So we're standing on stage and we're looking out at a bunch of people all wearing black cloaks. And we're telling them that the elites are engaging in trafficking and that they are potentially, you know, sacrificing children. It was completely out of control. And so we're going to do it again. And I think this time, what we're actually going to be focusing on is people's paranormal testimonies, because people have all these experiences with these entities and they don't know what they are. And it's whether it's sleep paralysis or alien abduction. And we've got some theories, and I think they probably resonate with you, Paul. I think you have a lot of the same ideas about what these things actually are. And so we wanted to highlight that people are having these experiences. And then we wanted to speculate as to who or what these entities are. And then we wanted to show historical context for these entities having existed and have been doing this to us for all this time, which is a weird undertaking for a live show. But that's what we're doing at the next Brohemian Grove. So it's just another one of those things where the growth came so fast. Are you familiar with Tim Pool?
I've heard of Tim Pool. Yeah.
Tim Pool, giant media conglomeration, the biggest like news podcast that you could find out there. He's a multi-millionaire, lots of influence. And we got into a bit of an argument with him on Twitter. And basically what he told my co-host was that he was, quote, too retarded to stop, which we then put on a t-shirt because we thought it was the best slogan in the world. But I think that really encapsulates what we're doing is, I think we're kind of on like the hero's journey. And the hero starts off as the fool in sort of the archetype of things, right? And I think it's because only the fool is brave enough to like go on the journey in the first place to risk becoming a hero. So in the same breath, I think that overlaps really well with this idea of too retarded to stop. If we were smart enough, we would realize that what we're doing is very daunting and that we're garnering the attention of a disproportionate amount of people very rapidly, and that our influence is spreading, and that this, you know, operation is getting bigger. And if we really looked at it too closely, we'd probably be afraid. But luckily, God made us pretty dense. and it allows for us to keep doing these things without feeling any fear. So yeah, I mean, no business doing these live events, and yet we persist. probably because we're too stupid to realize we should be afraid.
Well, I don't know if you are that stupid because you have the wherewithal to be self-reflective about it in a philosophical manner, like you just did there, quoting the hero's journey of all things. So I do think you do know what's going on here. And look, I'm with you because I didn't expect to blow up as quickly as I did over the past year either. I really didn't. You know, I started when I came back, I had 10,000, maybe 9,000, and now I'm on 80,000, and that came out of nowhere.
Incredible, incredible.
But it comes with this daunting concept. It's like, well, eyes are on me now. In more ways, people refer to me now. It's not like I'm just some guy. It's kind of like, go look at his work. He's somebody people watch a lot of, so let's go see what he's doing. And it's kind of, and you realize, oh, wait a minute, I'm talking about and exposing dangerous people. So there's that as well, you know. So you do have to wonder, like, well, I have no fear because in all things God are possible, and I have faith that he's protected me throughout all of this in many ways. And I don't think they can play their hand and really do anything about this, because it only serves to expose them even more if they do anything like that. So I think it's more like we have to just be considered crazy idiots in the corner of the internet, and they have to constantly frame us that way. And they can never really acknowledge us in any sense, because that gives credence to us. So I think in a way it's kind of like we're allowed to do these things because they can't really acknowledge us. It's like, you know, I do wonder, because like I said, I'm at a position now where it's like I'm going to see more weird stuff going on. And you know, I'm sure you've been called a shill yourself, like many times, just for simply existing in this realm. And it's kind of like, when I was a smaller channel, I used to call people shills.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, no way did you get that many subscribers if you are a part of the club. And now I'm suddenly up there. I'm like, oh, actually, it's actually incredibly easy. You just have to get lucky one day with the algorithm, and there you are. Yeah, it's not actually like a thing. Do you know what I mean? It is. So now I have to be. I'm very careful now when I'm out there talking to like bigger channels and bigger names. Like I talked to Eddie Bravo not long ago. I've talked to Sam Tripoli before. You know, and it's kind of you realize these are just people. Who are just in a different world to me and us. And it's kind of, they got there themselves just by putting in the work, and they've ended up here because people naturally gravitate to them, and that can't be helped, and it just happens. And networking is a huge thing behind all of this, and how people get, like, we all know each other. Just because we're in the same world. It's a small conspiracy world, and then before you know it, we help each other because we're all just kind of, do you want to come on my show? Yeah, you come on my show, you come on my show. And before you know it, you are up there. You're meeting your heroes who are announcing your idea for a show. You know what I mean? It's kind of calling it.
Paul, I really think,
you know, it's weird how that happens. You do just kind of. It feels like I didn't make any choices really to end up where I am. I've just been guided here somehow.
You made one choice, and I think that this is the fundamental choice. I've heard that in the Bible it says "fear not" 365 times. I've also heard that that's a bit of a misnomer. Whatever the case may be, clearly the Bible says it a lot. I think fear is the thing that stands between you and the pursuit of truth. I don't think that I'm special. I don't think that any of my peers are special. I think that we just made a decision to move forward despite the anxiety and the fear that this thing gives you. I think that God has given us all the ability to go on the hero's journey. And like I said before, you start off as the fool and you become the hero. And part of being that fool is being unafraid. I think that's really the heart of the fool. The fool, if he realized how daunting the task was, how to his detriment the task was, how dangerous the task was, then he would not pursue it. But he's a fool. And so he does not see these things. And that's what allows him to ascend beyond, and I don't even think it's an ascension. Ascension is like such a baggy word. I don't like it. Really what it does, it allows you to fulfill whatever you're here to fulfill. It's not, God doesn't give missions and purpose to some people. I think we all have that. I think if you stop and you think about your journey to where you are, you can see it yourself. But there are two things that will keep you from executing, and one of them is fear, and the other one is perspective or perception. In other words, are you the type of person that shakes your fist at God every time something goes wrong in your life? Or are you the type of person who maybe can't stop seeing all the things that go right in your life? And I'm kind of that latter person, where even when I was homeless, I never shook my fist at God and asked him why, because that felt silly. Even though I wasn't Christian or anything like that, I always believed that there was a God, a creator. And even as a teenager, I realized how short-sighted it was to shake my fist at God, and to kind of proclaim why me? Because in order for me to do that, I would have to know somehow that these things that are happening to me are actually bad for me in the future. And I don't know that. In fact, it often seems that the bad things that happen to people create better people in the future if they pass through the right filter. And I think that filter is also the opposite of fear, because fear and anger and resentment, they're all cousins. They all kind of rhyme in one way or another. And if that is the way that you live your life, you will simply never step out the door and go on your adventure. You will be too busy seeing all the things that are terrible and asking God why they're happening to you. But instead, if you can switch the lens, I think that's where it all comes in. So yeah, I don't think that we're special. I think you're right, Paul. It's networking, it's community building. That's huge. And I think that's what Nephilim Death Squad does really well. Is you said that I put you in a group chat for Nephilim Death Squad. It was like, even before I had any sort of presence, I was trying to build community. And that's one thing that I constantly do. I'm always trying to build community. So even Brohemian Grove is that, because now I get to hang out with my favorite content creators. I get to talk to them, pick their minds. God knows we don't have a lot of people in our real lives to talk to this topic about.
That's true.
And so, Brohemian Grove is sort of birthed out of that in very many ways. So yeah, you don't do these things if you live in a world of fear, and we're not special. We just maybe are too dumb to realize we should be afraid.
In a way, I don't like I said, I try not to think about it. That's pretty much how it goes. I just focus on my work and do what I feel led to do when I need to do it. And like I said, community is the forefront of what I do. I'm trying to bring people together. It's been literally the opening tune to all of my videos since I started this in 2014. I want to bring people together in this, because the truth of community was just a sporadic mishmash of isolated individuals screaming into the ether about their own crazy perspective for many years. And we were just all along for the ride, thinking these were unreachable people who were kind of just out there doing their thing, and there's no way we could ever, know them in any way. Yeah. And I was like, nope, these are just people like me who have a YouTube channel. It's not hard. Send them an email, and it's kind of, do you want to come on and do this thing? And like I said, I started this podcast to talk to people. I want to talk to other people out there who are also doing all of this. And I'm not saying it's me alone. There's a collective effort. Like I said, everybody's inviting each other now. It's like a confidence has been given somehow in this new time to say, let's meet each other. Let's actually get to know one another. Let's actually build a group. Let's get these chats going. Let's actually start something cohesive. Because I feel like this, like I said, I don't want to call it like an awakening. I hate these new age terms, or ascension. Yeah. But there has been this moment where a lot of people have come out of sleep, shall we say? They are starting to realize, as you described earlier. And I like I said, I've been in the game long enough, and so have you, to realize I'm getting them first before these other people get them, who want to lead them down this wrong path. And it's like, I'm finally in the position. It's like, I think I'm doing it. I'm finally, and it's kind of, what it is? It took 10 years. It took 10 years, but it finally happened. I'm in the right position now. And it's kind of, you just got to have an idea and go with it and roll with it and be consistent and stick with it. And I've encouraged everybody who comes to my channel, start your own channel. Just do it.
Me too.
Just be another voice out there. Yes. And we're all in it together. We all follow each other's channels. You'll also get a flurry of people subscribing in no time, because we're all there in it, supporting one another, having the conversation. And some people might not have the ability to be content creators. There's other things people can do to spread the truth and the word. But just by participating and being here with us in the audience today, the 400 people watching now, for example, it's kind of like, you don't understand, these are 400 human beings who actually have thoughts and feelings and ideas, and they are sharing their ideas in the comments, in the chats. They're building communities in these live chat moments, and it's kind of, there are places you can go to keep that going. And it's a golden age of truther again. I thought we had like a golden age in like 2014-16 period.
But this is it.
There's a renaissance now. Here we are. Yeah. And anybody who's like at the forefront of this is obviously a paid agent shill of some kind who's controlling all this. And there's nothing. But I think JT's in the chat. He asked, "What's the limit now before you officially get recruited by the Illuminati?" I think it's something like 100,000 subscribers is when you get your invite.
Is that
letter.
when it is? That's awesome.
Once you hit 100,000 subscribers, you're obviously a paid shill agent from then at that moment.
You know what I realized, Paul? on Nephilim Death Squad, we often talk about how the idea that anybody is waking up at all is kind of magnificent. And maybe there's actually a controlled waking up happening. And I don't know if that's so good given my analogy that I used before about the guy playing Uno. But it feels like we are waking up in spite of the most sophisticated propaganda machine that's ever existed in the history of mankind. Something that they've dumped billions or trillions of dollars into. They've done psychological study after psychological study. So many people are on the payroll trying to figure out how to hijack the human mind using colors and flashes and symbols and all these different things. And I would say that they've really refined it. They've figured it out. They've got a pretty good machine running. And despite that machine, there are people that are listening to this show. And that's kind of amazing because it's geared specifically at us. It understands our psychology. It knows how to distract us. It knows how to hypnotize us. And yet we persist. And I think what I'm beginning to realize, Paul, is that in order to fight the biggest propaganda machine in the history of mankind, you have to create your own propaganda machine. So yeah, we are propagandizing people in the name of Jesus Christ. And I think that we're supposed to be here in this time doing this thing because there's a lot of venues you could be fighting at. And yet the one that we choose is one that we fight with speech. And we use our platforms in this tiny little window that we have to try to speak to thousands or tens of thousands of people. And the name of the game is how do I articulate the ideas that are in my head that have given me faith in Jesus Christ to an individual who I don't know, who I can't see, and not just one, but tens of thousands of them. How do I do that? That's not a small undertaking. It's a weird thing to be doing in the course of human history. There's not really been much like this, unless, of course, there was some high level technology where they were doing this in like Atlantis or something before they were wiped out. But whatever the case may be, as far as we can tell from the history that they've obfuscated from us, this is the first time that we've had this sort of reach. And so it almost feels silly. I've got like all this colorful crap in my background, and there's a friggin' bird that's me, looks like Toucan Sam on a cereal box. And, but what I'm doing is I'm engaging in a form of warfare. It's 2025 and we're in an information war. We're trying to win over hearts and minds. And so we may be too retarded to stop or too stupid to realize that we should be afraid. And we may not have thought that we could reach the amount of people that we can reach. But slowly and surely we got together, we glommed onto one another, we did each other's shows, and now we have, I don't know, the honor of trying to save souls. I don't know. It just when you start putting it that way, it's like maybe every once in a while we got to look at it pretty critically for what it is, and it's pretty significant.
It is. It is. And look, I'm not saving anybody. Jesus Christ is the one saving people. Yes. We're signposts. We're saying, okay, so you made it this far, you need to go over there now. That's all my channel's ever really been about. It's like, I can talk for hours about any number of ideas. You've all heard it. You all know this. Like, I can just go on about the clowns and the Nephilim and whatever, but it's all inconsequential stuff, really. The Nephilim look like clowns, for example. It's a gospel trap. I'm using a catchy title with colourful ideas and odd-sounding phrases like Nephilim looking like clowns to get you to the gospel.
Yes.
Because in this clown world today, that's what it takes for some people. And
well, that's like I said, Paul, what are they using? They're using a scene change every 3 to 8 seconds. They're using strange symbols in the background. They're using music that's been engineered to kind of capture your attention and lull you into this weird state of suggestibility where they might be able to program you with some success. Like, yeah, we got to use the Nephilim look like clowns. It's probably significantly less nefarious than, I don't know, the alternative.
It's just me ranting and raving, but in written form. You know what I mean? But the point is, it's kind of it works. I get the messages telling me this has opened my eyes. I see it everywhere now. I finally understand how demons work, and you see the fruit. It's kind of okay. So this works for people. So I'll stick with it, and hopefully we can get more people being sent in the right way after this, because I want you to get past the Nephilim and the clowns eventually. I don't want you to dwell on that.
Yes,
that was a jumping pad to get you to thinking about higher things like theology and eschatology and the truth of what it means to be a child of God and creation and get to know Jesus and the Savior. That's what I want you to really be thinking about. But some people, like I said, need need the trivial thing. They need the novelty. They need the.
Well, we needed it, right, Paul?
Well,
that's why we came in through the back door.
Exactly. And like I said, the churches have failed. I mean, I'm going to get dramatic now, but
no, I mean,
they have failed people in a big way. They failed me. They certainly, I certainly didn't feel welcome there when I was in my state trying to find God. You know, it's a closed door. Most churches. It really isn't easy to get in there as you think it is. You know, it's really not. And what I've researching, what they're teaching people might be a complete lie as well in many ways. But maybe we'll save that for another podcast, for another time. We don't need to dwell on the big elephant in the room today, shall we say? But we'll definitely talk about the timeline another time, I think, because we've come up onto the first hour now, David. And obviously I've got another guest coming for the second half of the show. If you can... maybe in an hour's time, if you want to join me for the members only chat behind the scenes, you're welcome to come back for that.
An hour's time?
In 1 hour's time, that'll be 11 for me. I think that's 6 p.m. Eastern for you guys. It's members only on the YouTube channel. No ads, just me and a few tight-knit group of people just getting deep and dark about the things we probably can't talk about publicly. It's more fun. It's more candid. So if you want to come and join that afterwards in an hour's time, David, you're welcome to come and join me. But if you can't, I understand. That's fine.
I'm not sure yet, but I'll play it by ear. Maybe I'll hop in there.
Sure thing. You just send me a message if you're available, and I'll shoot a link across to whatever we're doing. But thanks for doing this, David. Let people know where they can find you if they've never seen you before, and then we'll sign off here.
Well, thank you, Paul. These are very cool. I'd love to be invited back again because I feel like I don't have a therapist. So maybe I can come here and unpack some of my stuff.
I do have to preface, I'm not a real therapist. I legally have to say that. So
why did I pay you? Can I get a refund? No. Guys, you can find me. You can find me on Nephilim Death Squad, pretty much wherever you find your podcasts. And you could also find me on Dangerous RTRDS. Which is short for Dangerous Retards. Technically, it's Dangerous Real Talk, Real Dudes. And that is a political commentary show, cultural commentary show. I do think that at the highest levels, politics is theater. I don't believe that it's genuine, but I have teamed up with some influential people within the political space. They like my input, and so it makes a pretty good show. So if you're looking for that sort of thing, Dangerous RTRDS on all platforms. And you can find me at David L. Corbo on Twitter. That's where I do most of my interacting. So if you want to chat a little bit, you can contact me there. Thank you, Paul. I appreciate it, man.
No problem. I have linked the Nephilim Death Squad, I think the Apple podcast in the description, and your Instagram as well, which obviously has all the links to everything. They can find you, David Lee Corbo. Thanks, David. It's been great catching up with you. God bless.
You too, brother. You too.
Well, wasn't that fun? I like that. It was good catching up with David. Like I said, we go way back. When I first, one of my first podcasts talking about the Nephilim like clowns was with David. It may actually have been the first podcast where I talked to anybody about the clown stuff and actually was trying to like relay it in. And then he was the first guy I was formulating my 2-hour spiel with. And like I said, I kind of watched him progress and go forth and become this this voice in the wilderness, a very controversial, perhaps not to everybody's taste type of voice. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I don't tacitly endorse everything that comes out of the man's mouth, but he's certainly been on a journey, and he's still on his journey, and it's great to kind of catch up with him and see what's going on there. I'm going to do a break now. I'm going to take a 5-minute break just at halftime, and then the next guest is going to come in. I'm going to play for you a song by the next guest. He's called, let me tell you, I got his name wrong in the title originally. His name's Judah Sargent, but I accidentally called him Jonah Sargent because when I was making this thing, I was in the middle of feeding 2 kids, and a lot of things were going on. I said his name wrong, but he is Judah Sargent. You can find him on Spotify. I have links down below in the description. I'm going to play one of his songs now just before we bring him in, and he's going to come on and share his testimony. And then I'm going to maybe have a bit of a therapy session with him and explain kind of what I want to do here. And he's kindly offered to let me use his music on my channel for free, just because it's worship music, and I think it's really high quality stuff. So I'm going to play that for you guys before our next guest comes in, and I'm going to obviously send him the links and get him ready so we can get straight into it when he comes back. So enjoy this, guys. The song is called, I've saved it here somewhere. This one's called Patchwork Quilt. In our last podcast, I played Endurance, but this one's called Patchwork Quilt. So enjoy this, guys, while I sort out our next talk.
I'll wait each a man's heart by sacrificial scar, the husband's path as you are. Take these old rags, for this heart has passed, and use your love to stitch a new patch on the old the last. I said take these old rags, for this heart has passed, and please use your love to stitch a new patch on the old to last. I will live however you want me to. Your journal, the nourishment for my soul, because no matter from what cloth I was cut, may my heart be as a patchwork quilt. Ooh. To you. Whether it be a burgundy woven into the covering of the color that embodies a son's blood for the lost, bring me down to the lowest color of the lower grade to show the highest, the most beautiful. What patch most? More hose, more hose, more hose. Exalt the man on the cross. What patch most? Exalt the man on the cross. Like the quill Mama had me covered, I slept soundly under. Father, here am I undesert. If you will choose any of these colors, oh, like the quilt Mama had me covered, I will live however you want me to. Thread it through for the glory of Savior's blood spilled, because no matter from what cloth I was cut, may my heart be as a patchwork quilt. To you.
Well, there we go, guys. Wasn't that nice? Yeah, so Patchwork Quilt, and that is by Judah Sargent. A link down below to his Spotify. This guy is criminally, and I mean criminally, undersubscribed. It's ridiculous. And you know, I'm an artist. Everyone knows my background. You know, I have an art degree. I have been doing this, you know, my entire life. I've been creating artwork and music and whatever I can with my hands visually. And my craft has transferred into typing on a keyboard and speaking into a microphone. I had to leave that life behind because I was incredibly just disgusted with the industry. Absolutely disgusted with the art industry and what it actually truly was. It was a circle jerking club where everyone's patting each other on the back at their cheese and wine parties while applauding absolute nonsense being paraded as a pinnacle of creation, when really it's just a pile of trash there in the corner. And I just couldn't abide by the lack of beauty standards within modern art, and it's not an industry I really could consciously be a part of and fake it within, because that's what you have to do. You just have to be able to talk for hours in a pretentious way about absolute nonsense and justify the existence of that nonsense using fancy words. And as long as you did that, you'd be applauded and put in the galleries. There was no objective standards, there was no beauty, there was no real talent or skill in these places, but they were the ones getting into the galleries. And my entire life was just over. It was ruined. Like, what the hell am I supposed to do with this? You know, I've worked up to this point, got the degree in university to see through it all and realize it's all just a giant sham. So when I see artists out there who actually are making real, genuine, quality music, you know, and that's actually worth listening to, real quality music or artwork or whatever it is that have real talents, and they have nobody listening to them or watching them or anything at all, while these other people are out there in the modern art galleries literally making plaster casts of their own asshole and putting it on the wall and getting applauded and being made famous, I get angry. It annoys me. And if I can do anything with my platform, it's I can build up brothers and sisters in Christ who are producing beautiful artwork. So I have with me Judah. He is with me here. Sorry, I almost did it again. I have him here with me.
Worries.
How you doing, man? Are you okay?
I'm good, man. Yeah, I'm good. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
No problem at all. You know, like, thanks for reaching out to me with the email. You just told me, Paul, you've been a great help in making me rekindle my passion for Christ. Please use my music if you want to. And you caught me at the right moment. I had some spare time and I literally listened to all your music. Like, I went through every album, and I managed to also go back in time and find some of your other stuff, which isn't, you go under a different name, your actual name.
Right.
But you obviously have Yahweh and the Vagabond, which is what you create this Christian music under. And you know what? You were like, oh, I'm surprised you found that stuff. And it's like you're trying to hide it, like you're ashamed. Don't be ashamed. Even your actual music, which is like a Jamiroquai 80s throwback style, something or other, it's really good. Mm-hmm. It's like really high quality stuff, man. So don't stop with that side of things. It's funky. I like it.
I appreciate you saying that.
I think Bendy. Is it Bendy? Is that what it's called?
Yep, that's the first one I think I released. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's on that's also my favorites list as well. I keep listening to that one on repeat. And
that's funny. That's cool to hear.
Yeah, and Endurance as well, which is obviously the one which is more Christian based. I keep listening to that on repeat as well. In fact, your first EP is fantastic. It's like absolutely amazing. Your recent album is a bit more experimental for my taste, but I can see what you were doing. It was basically just a giant prayer to God. It's what I gathered it was.
Yep.
And it was incredible. So thanks for reaching out to me. And again, anyone listening, go and show him some support. Let's build him up. Let's get this guy the recognition he actually deserves for his beautiful artwork. So that's enough of me talking about you and gushing over talent. I'm gonna give it to you. And if you can, just let the people know your creative background and how you got into making music, and then maybe we can segue into your religious outlook in life and how you've kind of maybe fell away, came back, and what led you to listening to this crazy group of people in the corner of the internet today, you know? So I'll kind of give the floor to you there, Judah.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, like I said, first of all, thank you for having me on, man. I appreciate I honestly didn't even think you were going to respond to me. So I appreciate you getting back with me and actually talking to me like human beings should. So I appreciate you doing that. As for my musical background, my dad, both my dad and my mom sang and played guitar. So I grew up as a kid just always around and in music. And then my brother as well, who's also really, really talented. He plays guitar, piano, everything he touches, he just, he's really, really good at. So just listening to them growing up, and then kind of like piggybacking off of what they were doing, kind of watching and observing. I wanted to try to start creating my own stuff. By the time I was, I think 14, I started trying to write my own music. And actually, the Yahweh and the Vagabond stuff was the stuff that I started out writing and creating. And later on, I'll get into it later on, but later on, I kind of segued into the 80s stuff. My dad made sure we were really, really educated on retro, pop, and anything from 60s to 80s music. We were very much immersed in a lot of the time. So I grew up with all that stuff. And down the road, I wanted to start creating that. But I started out with Yahweh and the Vagabond. And at the time, I was just, I considered the name Vagabond came from just feeling lonely in a way, in a lot of different ways. But it also came from how my mom and my dad were both shunned from a church that they went to. I think this was before I was born. But they both got saved in their early 20s, I believe. And shortly after that, they started going to a church. This was I'm originally from New York, upstate New York. They went to a church there, and essentially my dad just had, he had a lot of questions and a lot of maybe disagreements with what the church leaders were saying. And I guess, for lack of a better way to say it, he raised his hand too many times in class.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's what it's always felt like to me as a class, any church I've been to. But he did that, and eventually it got to the point where they decided to basically kick them out, if I'm remembering this properly. And so, that, growing up with two parents that went through that, I was already in a house that was skeptical of the church. I grew up in a household that was very skeptical of the church already. And so I felt very much like a vagabond, because all of my friends were all a part of these churches, part of these groups that I was not a part of.
Yeah.
And we still, I was also homeschooled. So we still made sure to socialize and get out and make sure we were in, different programs and such to socialize. So I had friends that just felt, very, very much alone a lot of the time. But as far going back, trying to stick to what you asked, going back to the musical part of things.
Wherever you feel you need to take this, you can take this. This is therapy after all. So, there's no holds barred. If you want to tell that story of your parents and what that did to you and how it inspired and influenced you, then tell the story. It's absolutely fine.
Okay, right on. Let me think of where to start here. I mean, that's pretty much it. From the time by the time I was, like I said, around 14 or 15, I started writing my own stuff. I think I wrote like this skeleton of endurance when I was 15. And it kind of changed and morphed over time into what it is now. But the melody and the chorus all have stuck since I was 15. So I wrote that around 15 years old, and then Patchwork Quilt was around 16 or 17 years old. And my big influences in that around that age were, I don't know if you know of a guy named Josh Garrels. Super, super talented. And he was just very prophetic in the way he wrote, and he's still around. He still writes and performs and everything. But he was one of my big influences. And there were a few others as well, but mainly, I mean, yeah, him mainly was just, yeah, I wanted, when I was a kid, man, I wanted to be just like that guy. I went to a couple of his concerts, man, and he's always been a really humble, down to earth kind of guy. I met him for like a Q&A before one of his concerts, and he plays an instrument called a charango, and I got him to, I had one. My parents had got me one because they knew I loved him, and I brought it with me, and he signed it. So yeah, he's a super cool guy. But from there, after that, I joined musical theater, and it wasn't secular theater. It was a Christian musical theater. And so, by the time I joined that theater, there were a lot of things going on behind the scenes that I wasn't quite aware of yet. Just a lot of corruption, and I'm sure a lot of people that are from that theater that might be watching this at some point will get some backlash maybe from them. But just trying to be honest here.
Yeah,
I'm sure at one point that theater was, they were after the right things as far as the Christian theater goes, but by the time I joined, it was all about who could get ahead first. It felt like, and then once you got ahead, you were favored over the others, which is how secular theater is, So it didn't feel that much different from what I heard about secular theater. I'd never been to secular theater, but Paul talks about how the foot is no less important than the hand in the body, and then if the whole body was an ear, then how would they see? If the whole body was an eye, then how would you hear? That's not how it was in theater. If you were the eye, you were better than the foot. And that bothered me. That bothered me so much. But I was also really insecure at the time, and I was just eager for attention. And so it was like I was being bothered by this thing that I knew was going on, that was wrong. But at the same time, I wanted the attention, So when I got a good part, I was like, heck yeah, I'm gonna own it, and later on, as time passed and I was with them for a few years, I decided that I was gonna step away. And then another theater kind of came out of that theater and tried to do it the right way, And so I joined them for a little while, and it's. I was talking to my brother yesterday, and I actually commented in the chat and said that I was going to shout out JT because my brother and I went to Pilot Mountain yesterday, and we hiked it. A glorious place, by the way. But I was telling Israel, my brother's name is Israel. I was telling him on the way there, it's hard to take something that was designed as pagan and convert it into Christianity. You've got to run a tight ship if you're going to do that, because it can get corrupted really fast and go back to its roots. And as I'm sure you're aware, theater it's got a lot of ritualistic and pagan roots.
All the way back to Dionysus. That's right.
I mean, I haven't. I know that as a fact. I haven't done a lot of digging in theater, but I know it's very, it comes from a very ritualistic and paganistic background. So if you take something like theater and try to turn it into Christian, you might be able to get away with it for a little while, but then eventually, I don't know. But I think that's what happened here. I think it started to become corrupt because of the foundation that it was built on. You built something on a pagan foundation. You pray that it doesn't turn, it doesn't kind of turn back to its roots. But Anyway, uh, I dated a girl there for about 3 years, and this is kind of a big part of my testimony here. After after 3 years of dating her, we kind of decided we wanted to go in different directions. Um, and I was the one that broke it off. I was just seeing a lot of differences that we were having, and she wanted to go somewhere in life I didn't want to go, and I just decided that it wasn't right. And shortly after that, I met the woman who is my wife today. I'm married, by the way, we have a 3-year-old little girl, and yeah, so I'm a dad. But I met my wife shortly after that, and so the rumors were going around the theater community that I had cheated on the girl I was with previously, and it's entirely false. But those are the rumors that were going around, and the part that hurt me the most was that only a handful of people that I knew out of all of that was a huge community, and maybe 3 people reached out to me about my side of the story and what happened. And so I was left to believe, okay, I guess everyone else just believed that I had cheated on her, and didn't give me the chance to say, hey, no, this is what happened. And so that bothered me for a while. I became really bothered by that. I think, yeah, I think, trying to think about where this is at in time right now through my life. But my parents are now separated, and so my dad wasn't in my life really very much at the time. So I think it was kind of bringing up some pain from that as well. You when you're in a community of people, when something tragic happens, or at least tragic to you, you hope that community will support you and surround you. And so when that happened, I I was really bummed out that only 3 people maybe reached out to me about.
Yeah.
I remember a guy came, he reached out to me and said, hey man, like, I wanted to give you the chance to like explain what happened, because this is what I'm hearing, and that blessed me so much, because I think God definitely knew I needed him to do that, at that specific time, because I was hurting from that. But so hang on to that, because it's there's some more later that God showed me down the road. But after that, I joined a band, and they were like a hip hop pop alternative rock band. It was like a very experimental thing that they were doing, and I had opened up for one of their house shows. They did a house show, and I opened up for them, and everybody loved it. And so the producer for that band, his name is Luke. Super solid guy. He's actually the guy that helped me produce the EP that you've been listening to, Paul. He came to me and he was like, hey man, we love your stuff. And it was kind of a joke at first, like, you think you'd ever be interested in joining the band? And I was like, yeah, maybe, and he was like, wait, really? I was like, yeah, sure, maybe, maybe we could do something cool with this. And so I joined the band, and we did a lot of fun stuff. Made a lot of interesting music. We've had a lot of like critics critique it over time. A lot of people didn't like it. A lot of people loved it. And but that band was called the Spare Keys, if anyone's interested in going and digging up that stuff.
I am. I will now. Now you've said it. Yeah.
yeah, go for it. Yeah. So the hip hop side comes from Carter, and he is just incredibly talented. I mean, he's probably in the top 3 most talented lyricists I've ever met in my life. The way that he can just like pump out a song without even thinking about it sometimes is just so incredible to me. And then Eric was the pianist, and he's also incredibly talented. He came from a jazz background. And Luke as well. Luke is he's got such a good ear for producing, and yeah. So later on, he excuse me, he helped me produce my EP for what was called Vagabond at the time, or VGBD is what we called it for short. My first EP, and from there, I kind of left the Vagabond stuff behind and started to work on, the experimental stuff with the Spare Keys. And then I kind of segued into the 80s stuff from there. That kind of is what created that 80s side of music, working with the Spare Keys. And so I started doing that a bunch, trying to write all these cool sounding songs, and none of them had a lot of meaning. There were little nuggets here and there of meanings that, I pulled from maybe my familial background, or like from something I went through, or, something even regarding my faith, I would just kind of throw in there, here and there, whatever I was feeling or whatever I was thinking about, I would just put in, and then add music to it and see what happened. And the more and more I did that, the darker and darker it got, because there were the darker and darker my life got, So I think whatever you're going through as an artist, it's going to come out in your art, in some way, shape, or form. It's going to come out. It's going to show.
Oh yeah.
And the darker, the stuff that I went through, I would start writing about that. Some of those things I didn't even release until I got to this one song that was just so dark, man. And I was like, man, I would love to finish this song, but there's something inside of me that's going, do not put it away, put it away, put it away, And I watched an old Decoding Babylon video with my brother yesterday on the way home from Pilot Mountain, from JT's channel. They were talking about Taylor Swift in there, and like how music is like, there's like spells involved and stuff. And I couldn't help but like resort back to that time when I was writing that music. And I was going, man, God stopped me from like doing something dark. And I look back on that song now and I'm like, yeah, man, I could, like, I can't reconcile like writing something and putting some like really good music behind it, but the writing is dark. I couldn't do that. But I kept going. I kept trying to write it. And then finally, it was the next day, I remember like specifically, I got these really, really bad sores in my mouth. Like I went to the doctor and they said, what you have is so rare, but you have it. And so, we're just going to give you this and this and this and see if it helps. And it were these sores that just started on my gums and just went all the way down my throat, and I couldn't speak. And so it felt like God was saying, if you're not going to stop, I'm going to stop it for you, And it was kind of like, it felt like out of love, he's saying, I got to do this, if you're not going to do it, I'm going to do it. So I knew right then and there, I repented. And like, I remember it being in the shower and just like repenting and like saying, I'm so sorry, I'm ready to, I'm ready for whatever's next. And so he started showing me more about who he was. And that's when I really started to, that's when my life really started to change. I went to a men's conference organized by an organization called Zoe. And they have a conference called Heart of a Warrior. So I went there in, oh gosh, this had to have been 2019 maybe, in Colorado. It might have been 2019. And they do like a session where it's like about the father and the son wound, the wound that you have as a son from your father and vice versa. And try to if I can try to summarize this, they do a session and then they give you homework, and then do a session and give you homework. So they gave me this homework, and the homework was asking the Father, the Son, and then the Holy Spirit different questions. And the first one was, Father, what do you think of me? And the second was, Jesus, how do you see me? And the third was, Holy Spirit, what do you want me to do with the things that you reveal to me? So they say, go out wherever, go out in nature and find somewhere quiet and be with the Lord. Let him speak to you. So I went and I climbed this tree. And the trees on that property were so beautiful. I mean, they were perfect climbing trees. The branches came all the way down to the ground. I mean, you could just climb and climb and climb and climb safely, I got to almost at the top, and I'm just sitting there. And so I asked, Father, what do you think of me? And I'm pulling the bark off of the tree, kind of fidgeting while I'm talking. And I'm kind of throwing it, just talking to him, what do you think of me? And this is what I think of me. What do you think of me? And as I'm throwing it, the bark is, floating as bark does in the air, and he says, it's like I heard / felt it. It was a strange thing to explain, but he said, you are free. That is how I see you. You're free. So, and it hit me like a ton of bricks. I was like, okay, yeah, that was you, and I had never heard him like that before. And so the first time I really heard him like that, he said, you're free, and then so the next question, I went right to the next question. It was, Jesus, how do you see me? And I'm doing the same thing. I'm picking off the bark from the tree and kind of like weaving it back into itself, into other pieces of bark. And I look over, and again, it hits me, and he goes, you are grafted. You're grafted into me. That's how I see you. You're united with me. I was like, okay, whoa, okay. So I climb down, take some time to kind of ponder that, what just happened. And I look over, or actually, no, I'm sorry. I'm getting ahead of myself. Then I asked the question, Holy Spirit, what are you going to do with the things that you reveal to me? I look over, there's a Frisbee sitting in the same branch that I'm on. And I go and grab it. I'm looking at it, and I'm like, okay, what does this mean? And I look down, and there's another Frisbee in a bush. So I climb down, I grab that one, and just one leads to another until I have like probably 10 Frisbees in my hand. And then a buddy that I had met there comes up to me, and he's like, hey, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm just gathering Frisbees. I feel like God wants me to gather these Frisbees for some reason. He was like, okay, I'll help you. I was like, right on. So we gather a bunch of Frisbees. We just got armfuls of Frisbees. And we take them back up, and turns out we're on a disc golf course. That's where the property was. Take them back up to the porch, and there's the place where the Frisbees were kept. We're in literally like a little house that they had made for them. So we put them all back in there, and then it hit me right there. And he said, I want you to go and remind everybody that that they are free as well. They are also free. And he said, because my son did not die just for the people who would have faith in him. He died for everybody, So it is only Jesus's blood is what sets free, It is not your faith that does that, And what I kind of go back to when I try to support that is Peter, when he fell, when he was walking on the water, and he lost faith, and he fell. And he sank. And the fact that he lost faith did not sway Jesus's decision to reach down and grab him out. He still pulled him out. But if he had faith, he would have walked right over to him, And so after that, I got into, started listening to a lot of Graham Cook. I don't know if you're familiar with Graham Cook.
I'm not afraid. Right now, no.
He's a speaker. He talks all about, Jesus's true nature. He's actually from the UK, I believe. But he talks about what God's true nature is like versus this idea that we've conjured up based on tradition and experiences that we've had with our parents or with someone that we trusted or whatnot. But after I started learning about who God really was, I started writing a lot of songs. And those songs were what kind of made up the album, My Own Misconception of God. That's what the album's all about. It's all about the experimental one that you were talking about. It's
Mm-hmm.
I believe it's 20. Oh, I should know this. I think it's 21 tracks. And most of those tracks are just all about how I thought God was one way, his approach and his behavior toward me this whole time. And turns out he was nothing like I thought he was. His character is actually everything the fruits of the Spirit are. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, self-control, and faithfulness, correct?
Mm-hmm.
He's all of those things. And I was totally unaware of it because I had already believed and I was already convinced of what the enemy had accused him to be. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So what I realized after I had come to that realization was what God was doing with the experience that I went through in the theater community was he was saying, this is how I feel a lot of the time, like I would love to share with you who I really am, but you're already convinced of somebody that you were accused or that I was accused of being. So give me the chance to show you who I really am, And so I started inviting him into my day and started like asking him to show me who he really was. And ever since then, man, my whole perception on him, on life, on myself, on my family, on everybody has just been like 180. Like it's and I think it's because, if whatever you believe about yourself is how you're going to behave. And I didn't believe that I was worth his time. I didn't believe, I can pretty confidently say that I've never doubted his existence. My parents both, we were raised by very loving parents as kids, and so as long as I could remember, my relationship with God, I've always known he was there, but like through time, I kind of doubted his, am I really valuable to him? And so, and also one thing I didn't mention earlier is that when you grow up in a household where your dad was kind of burned by the church, everything that he said, I just trusted blindly. This guy, I remember waking up in the morning at like 5 a.m. He would already be up, like just reading his Bible. Like on several occasions, I would just wake. So this guy was like in the Word all the time. But then, with that being said, I just trusted everything he said, and I didn't research anything for myself. And so, let's see. Going from there, about while writing My Own Misconception of God, let me see, where was I at? Excuse me, sorry, man. I'm starting to feel like I'm rambling a little bit.
No, it's okay. It's okay. So you've basically summarized most of your journey up until because you released that album in 2024. And I showed it on the on the screen when you were talking about it, so people could see. It was 21 songs, by the way, because I checked.
Okay,
so
good.
but like I said, that album really, it felt, when I was listening to the whole thing, it is a journey, like from start to finish. Each song kind of goes on to the next, and it's you kind of confronting each aspect of God and your relationship with God in your own life. And I could tell, like, this is art. This isn't necessarily just music we're listening to here. This is a true expression of an individual's, a culmination of knowledge and wisdom and journey in building his relationship with God. And I was like, a lot of people find it hard to listen to, I imagine, because it is not traditionally how songs are compiled in a modern pop CD, shall we say, or a compilation or something like that. Like, not necessarily, you would never hear this on the radio. But I felt it. I felt every bit of it, and the highs and the lows of the whole album. And it was, like there's very few albums I've listened to throughout the years where I've done that. I think Neutral Milk Hotel was an album I used to listen to a long time ago, which had a similar vibe to it. Like it's hard to listen to, but you can't stop listening to it because it's like you feel it's teaching you something. It's telling you something. So I thought it was a great album, and I think your EP is great. The first one you made when you were quite young, from the sounds of it, these songs were formulated in your mind. They are fantastic in terms of just you can listen to this song at any time on repeat type music. Your 80s stuff is really good. It's really good to listen to. It's fun to listen to. And it shows a whole new side of your creative range, which you wouldn't have expected listening to these albums first. And it's kind of, don't limit yourself. I mean, I know what it's like as a father. You kind of sacrifice creativity for family life in a way, and you don't really have much time to do these things as much as you would have liked to prior. Or you kind of have to shift your focus a little bit in many ways, or again, finding the time to make music can become more difficult when you're kind of making music in other ways, like growing a family. You know what I mean? It's a different type of mission, isn't it? But I would encourage you, don't stop. I think you could keep going, and I think you have. I think God knows you have the talent. That shouldn't go to waste. I think you can reach a lot of people with your voice and your words. Maybe that's why he was trying to stop you from going on with that other song. Because maybe he's saying this isn't the type of music I have in mind for you to make. Who knows?
Right, because, it's not going to benefit.
Because as somebody who's obviously grown up Christian and seen quite a lot of the Christian music scene out there, I assume. I, as somebody who wasn't raised a Christian, I'm not really impressed with Christian music. I think it's a lot of it's tacky and cheesy and low quality. But when I heard you singing that, I was like, I didn't know it could be like this. You know what I mean?
That's great feedback. I appreciate you saying that.
Yes, so I'm impressed.
Thank you, man. The Christian, especially the contemporary Christian genre, man, is like, it's kind of like what I was saying about earlier about like the theater. It's like people take something that was already secular or something like, and then trying to be like that, so that you can kind of get in and become a name, and I think that is I think that's unfortunate, because Jesus, we're called to come out of Babylon, not become some weird part of it, and claim Christian. We're supposed to be different, we're supposed to be transformed and not conform, so
well, what you saw in the theater scene there is pretty much what I saw in the art scene, the gallery scene. It's do what you need to get ahead type of attitude. It's not what you know, it's who you know. It's not about the art or talent. It's about saying the right thing to the right person at the right time. It's about power. And the art is the excuse to get on the gravy train. You know what I mean? It's not actually anything to do with creativity or beauty or standards or anything like that. Which is why I didn't pursue a career as being an artist in the traditional sense. I suppose in a way I've channeled it into this channel, into what I do now today in the book, in the writing, my own way, But it's kind of, I'm in this lucky position now where it's kind of, I've got a platform and I can introduce artists to people that are worth knowing and listening to. I did it for Elizabeth Joyce Artwork. She goes by Rejoice Artwork, and she sent me this. She sent this amazing piece of work, highly detailed drawings of birds in a rose window. And
that is beautiful.
I was blown away. I went to her website, and she's working on a full colored painting version of this right now, which I will be buying. When she's finished, I'll be buying the print and I'll be getting it behind me. But
you got to be looking forward to that, man. That's beautiful.
But she's somebody who obviously came to Christ. I think I'm not sure how old she is, maybe mid-20s, but relatively later on, wasn't. And obviously went through a very similar experience as me through the psychedelic industry, and obviously he's trying to make it as an artist in the industry, and I'm like, you have all the talent. And that's the problem. It's kind of, you're probably not going to actually make it in the art industry through the traditional means, but we have a community here of thousands of people who can make her have the dream of being an artist and sustaining a living off of it, let's do it.
Yeah.
You know, buy her art, go and buy her artwork, buy a print. You know what I mean? Support her and do those things.
Yeah.
And I want to do the same for you. And it's kind of a call to anybody else in our community, because you're a member. I consider you a member of all of this as much as anybody else listening today. If you are a creative person or an artist, come and share your work with me, and we'll see what we can do, you know, and we'll work on it together.
I appreciate that.
And we'll get it out there. But we're coming up to the hour now.
Yeah.
And thanks for coming on and doing this, Judah. I really appreciate it. You have a beautiful testimony, and I've been watching the chat, and I think people really appreciate you sharing your story. If there was any particular song you'd want to end this podcast with, what would you choose? I would choose Endurance personally. Maybe that's the one I like. But what would you prefer people hear of your work as we close this out?
Gosh. Well, my message was that I really wanted people to be reminded that they were already free, and that God saw you exactly in the same light as he sees his son, Jesus. You were united. We're all united with him. It's just though those who have faith in that find their salvation, you know? And so I think with that being said, either expression or what it means from my latest album. I'll let you choose. Both of those songs just speak very, very much on, you know, who I thought God was versus who he really is, and how much joy there is in that. So yeah.
Okay.
Well, thank you so much for having me on, man.
No problem. Well, I'll end with the shorter one, which is what it means, so I can then go on to the after show, members only live show, which will be on the hour after this. You're welcome to stick around for that if you want. But while this plays, we will be muted. I won't be able to speak to you or do anything until it's over. But when it is over, if you're still around, we can continue this conversation afterwards and go into the members only chat after this. Immediately after this song ends, guys. I'll meet you over there if you are. Thanks for being here. Thanks for listening, everyone. And as always, God bless.
Thank you, man. Appreciate you having me on.
No problem.
Followed every route, sang along to every song in the book. Am I merely a fool trying to show my gratitude for what you've done? But isn't anything at all about what I do? Seems we've become our ancestors killing lambs all over again. Lift our hands in the air to a certain combination of notes paired with cultural emote, while the nature of man has to find a way to feel the hand of God. Pat him on the back end, tell him he's done a good job, when we both know you can't tell if he really is or not. Let's be real, he doesn't care about the things you do, which you think will carry you into at least a week's worth of his favor. Because he just wants you to be lying down, resting to the sweet sound of his hands and feet at labor. What you easily forgot in the time after you thought that you found God is that it takes just the strength of a child's mind to grasp what it means to understand the monochrome simplicity of a man who shouldn't love you and shouldn't love me, but doesn't care. You see, the fight isn't with transgressions, they've all been removed. As far as one end of creation is as far to the other side. The fight is with retaining you and your maker have been reunified. And you know your spirit can't be harmed on the holy peak now, though your mind can be convinced you're somewhere or somebody or not. Don't know about you, but I'm finished living in the valley at the hands of my own misconception of God. And I anticipated in saying I'm disappointed in the way you behave. All of a sudden, yet all the while, His response doesn't even scratch the surface of the expected wrath. I was nervous about breaking loose my interpretation of his character, stunning my likeliness to see as it is the Creator's good, and in his graceful likeness he fashioned man and woman, and they multiply and grow and soon forget that he's over the moon, he's set in the sky about them.